Welcome back. All right, we're going to talk about the Vancouver Canucks today. So I got all the season previews done. What I like to do is we're getting closer to the season is just, very informal, and I like to go over certain teams. I want to talk about Vancouver, and there's a reason why. When I was doing my pick on who I feel is going to win the Stanley Cup, and I picked Dallas. And it is very unusual. I don't think I've ever picked a team that I root for before the season starts as the one that I think is going to win the Stanley Cup. But not picking Vancouver, and where I had Vancouver in the hierarchy, it upset some who felt that I'm underestimating them. But I also saw some saying, hey, they're not contenders. It's just last season was just a mirage. It's not going to happen again. So I wanted to look at this and come down on the idea of, okay, so was it a mirage? Did they overachieve? My argument's been I think they probably overachieved a bit, but I still think they're a playoff team next season. The 27-11-3 record in the first half, 57 points, was great. The second half, they were still good. 23-12-6, 52 points. They did win the division, being 7th in goals for and 5th in goals against. Tells you they played pretty well that season. So looking at today's skate, so it's currently September the 24th. They're going into a game tonight against Seattle, and it's not the A lineup they've got in there. So they've again at the skate, the four lines they had Besser with Suter and Lekaramaki. Lekaramaki, clearly they want to take a good look at this kid, see what he's able to do. And his shot has been talked about already. And so we'll see how that translates to preseason games and whether or not he ends up on their lineup or in their lineup to start the season, because there's some speculation maybe he does. The third line, Heinen, Amon, and Linus Karlsson. Karlsson, I thought, played pretty well in call-ups last year. We'll see if he gets more games this year. And then on the fourth line, Ulrichsen, who has turned some heads with Canuck fans already. Sasson, who's very likely headed for Abbotsford. And Blais. Sammy Blais on a PTO. We'll see if he earns a contract. There's speculation he probably will. Maybe he fits in as an extra forward / fourth liner. We shall see. On the blue line, you have DPD, as they're calling him, or Pettersson 2.0, with Hronik, Wolanin with Myers, Forbert with Friedman, and Nanette, Shilovs, and Young. And Ty Young's looked good in preseason action in previous years. We'll see how he does if he gets into the game tonight. I think it's probably going to be half and half between Shilovs and Young, but we'll see soon enough. The defense is talked about a lot, but let's go through who's not playing tonight as well. DeBrusk, Pettersson, Sherwood, DiGiuseppe, Miller, and Sprong. On the blue line, you've got Hughes, Juleson, Soucy, Desharnais, and in net, Lankinen and Patera. There's some depth here. The Vancouver Canucks, I think, the best depth they've had in a very long time. Now, the Canucks are coming off winning the division, losing in the second round against the Oilers, and Game 7 was tough. Though the score itself was close, Vancouver was overmatched through a majority of that game. So for the Vancouver Canucks, they're going to have to use that as fuel for this season, and maybe they win the division again, get that rematch with Edmonton, and see if they can win the rematch. So numbers to keep an eye on from last season going into this season. JT Miller at 103 points. I don't really expect Miller to hit 100 points again. This is where Pettersson's 89 points are something to look at, because I could see those numbers flipping. Maybe Pettersson gets 103 points, and we see Miller with 89 points. Either way, I think fans would be happy with that. Quinn Hughes, 92 points for him. Can he hit 100? I think he can. I think he can go above 20 goals as well. He's a very talented defenseman, the most talented defenseman Canucks have ever had. Brock Besser had 40 goals this past season, 16 on the power play. I don't think he'd even had 30 in a season before this last year. So there's some question, and understandably, that there are questions about whether or not Besser can get to 40 again. But the debate is, should he have scored more as well? Could he have been a 50-goal scorer with a little more puck luck? Then you've got Garland, Höglander, and Joshua with 62 goals combined. And for some who are negative on the Canucks, I've seen some complaints about Höglander or Garland getting top 6 minutes. They're not that great. Höglander's one of the hardest working hockey players I think I've ever seen wearing a Canucks jersey. And this past season, he scored more than 20 goals. So, guy's not really a scrub. Demko had a .918 save percentage during the regular season. Before his playoffs were done, a .917 save percentage there. And then you have Shilovs had an .881 save percentage in 4 games he played. He had a 3-0-1 record, though. And in the playoffs, he had an 898 save percentage. So he made some key saves, and Shilov's played well, but the overall numbers would tell you he did play well, but it's totally understandable they went out and got Lankinen. Since we don't know whether or not Demko is going to be good to go to start the season, Shilov's at this point does not need to clear waivers. So when Demko's back, I guess that puts Shilov's down in the AHL, likely with Patera, which might be a good thing for them. So players that played in Game 7 against the Oilers and are now gone. I just wanted to focus on this a little bit. You got Lafferty a fourth liner. Mikheyev, who had absolutely no luck for Vancouver. Hopefully it's a better season for him in Chicago. Ian Cole, who I believe is in Utah, right? Zadorov and Lindholm both go to Boston, both on long-term deals that have a lot of risk for Boston. So while I've seen people complain that they didn't replace either Zadorov or Lindholm, I think that adding DeBrusk up front, I think that helps to mitigate the loss of Lindholm. Losing Zadorov hurts, sure, but if they had signed Zadorov to that contract, I can almost guarantee for the people who want to throw the negativity Vancouver's way, they'd be complaining that the contract was too much money for too long if the Canucks had signed the same deal with Zadorov that Boston did. So looking at daily faceoffs projected lines for the Canucks, where they think it lands, and this is interesting too, because they got Heinen, Miller, and Besser. Mentioned recently, Danton Heinen, if he gets top 6 minutes in Vancouver, he could have quite the season offensively. Then on their second line, they have DeBrusk, Pettersson, and Lekkerimaki. So the idea that Lekkerimaki could end up on that second line, if he does, he's going to get some points as well. Keeping in mind that maybe he starts the season there, does he stay there? And then Höglander, Blueger, and Garland. This is where you keep in mind Blueger right now has been injured. The speculation is he should be back for the start of the season, but you just never know, right? And then that fourth line, Sherwood, Suter, and Sprong. And I've seen Sprong, depending on which lineup you're looking at, which website you're looking at, I've seen Sprong as high as the second line. I've seen him on the third line and here on the fourth line as well. So it really depends on how you think the lines are going to go. I know when I did the season preview, I messed around with a little bit because I think while that third line has been excellent for Vancouver, I think spreading that energy around a little bit could work. But that being said, the blue line gets a lot of criticism. It deserves a little bit of criticism, but Hughes and Hronik, decent pairing there. I don't think they stay together all season. I think they split them up at points. Soucy is a good top four defenseman. Yes, Tyler Myers, ideally to me as well, because I've seen other fans say it. Myers should be probably on the third pairing. That third pairing would be Forbort and Darnay. And again, I'd love to see Wolanin get a chance. I'd love to see him get a spot in the lineup. But you know what? Pettersson looked pretty good in the Young Guns tournament. So we'll see how Pettersson does in the preseason and whether or not he earns himself at least some sort of look with Vancouver once the regular season gets going. Because I think they understand that the blue line is where they need a little bit of work, a little bit of help. And I think if they had more cap space, I think they would have addressed it already. So goaltending, Lankinen and Shilovs that's going to be your tandem to start the season. I think Lankinen plays more games than Shilovs. Lankinen has more experience, and his numbers at the NHL level have been very good. Again, I'm so surprised that he was available for the Canucks to pick up, and a bargain contract on top of that. So thanks NHL for not getting him signed. I think that's a good thing for the Vancouver Canucks. Now, when you look at the injured list, there are 3 injuries, 2 of them kind of major. In that Dakota Joshua, when he was in the lineup, was fantastic. 18 goals, best season he's ever had in the NHL. You want him healthy, you want him in the lineup. Demko obviously is one of the best goaltenders in the National Hockey League. And while I think the Canucks can win without Demko, obviously you want Demko in the net. Similar to last year, Tampa Bay to start the season. Sure, they won some games without Vasilevsky, but you really need Vasilevsky in the lineup if you're Tampa Bay. For Vancouver, you really need Demko in the lineup as well. And I don't think it's a sign of a team that has crippling deficiencies if while their starters out they struggle. There are a lot of teams that would struggle without their starting goaltender in the National Hockey League. So getting Demko back as soon as possible and making sure he's 100% is very important. We understand this is a very rare injury. The muscle around his knee that's being affected. Lots of discussions about how that's going to work. But the idea that, his career is going to be done. No. There was a setback to his rehab during the summer. His career's not finished. And Teddy Bluger. Teddy Bluger, of course, fourth line center. Bluger, I think, a useful person in the Vancouver Canucks lineup when he's there, and hoping he's not out for that long. So they do have some depth options here, too, that I wanted to talk about a bit. Nathan Smith gets picked up in the offseason. We'll see if he gets any games. He can play fourth line center. Baines, when he got called up, he looked a little over his head with Vancouver, but, he's had another year now to mature, and maybe next time around he looks a lot better in a Vancouver uniform. Josh Bloom, young player, could come up and get some games. Danila Klimovich, maybe this is the year we see Klimovich get called up and get a game or two. Jet Wu, so we talk about depth on the blue line. Jet Wu has the offense on that blue line, and I mean, in Abbotsford, he has, some good offense down here. Maybe he gets into some games for the Vancouver Canucks this season. And Guillaume Brisebois, who got some games this past season and is a good depth option as well. Yes, the Vancouver Canucks absolutely could use, I think, another top 4/top 6 defenseman. I'm not sure where you get that player. I'm not sure how you make that work under the cap. But I can guarantee you that Patrick Allvin, if he feels they need to have a defenseman, is working the phones. One thing that I like about the Vancouver Canucks right now, and the way that Allvin's running things, he's not shy about making trades. And he's creative with those trades too, to make sure that they don't go over the cap. And I think he's been very smart with the moves that he's made. It is so weird now to watch the Vancouver Canucks management do something and think, I'm really excited about what they might do. Rather than under Jim Benning, very often it was, okay, what contracts have been signed? Now what's going on? We traded what for who? Oh, goody. So, it's a bit of a different era. Patrick Allvin being the general manager is why I have optimism that this team can once again be first or second in the division. However, I don't know that I see a Stanley Cup champion necessarily here. And it might be that blind spot for me that I do not believe that the Vancouver Canucks will win a Stanley Cup in my lifetime. I have said that for a long time now. I still feel that way. Although, keep in mind that with this current core, I've got jerseys with almost everybody's name on the back of this current core that, Pettersson, Besser. I've got a Hughes jersey. Of course, I had a bunch of Horvats, which, Horvat's gone to the Islanders, but I've got a JT Miller jersey as well. So I did that intentionally with the idea that, hey, I really like this core, and it is a core that I like the most since the one the Canucks had in the early to mid 90s. So it is an exciting time, I think, for the Canucks, and I think that this could be a team that wins the division, and maybe they prove me wrong in the playoffs. I'd be very happy if they did, but I still think that if you're looking at the absolute top contenders in the league, there's still some cracks here, some injury concerns and whatnot, but I also don't think they're going to fall right out of the playoffs and out of contention altogether. So I'm kind of in that mushy middle where, I think they're one of the top 10 teams in the league, absolutely. I don't know if they're necessarily one of the top 5. Your Stanley Cup champion will usually be a top 5 team in the league, though the President's Trophy gets talked about what a jinx it is. Usually the team that wins the Stanley Cup is near the top of the standings and has a really strong regular season going into the postseason. So for the Canucks, I think one thing to keep an eye on is that second half of the season is very important. Carolina, Florida, and Edmonton had the best records from January to April in the National Hockey League. Carolina only got to the second round, but Florida won the Stanley Cup over Edmonton in the finals. So being really good in the second half of the season is important. It's about Vancouver getting hot at the right time. So even if they're missing Demko to start the season and they have a little bit of a struggle to start things off, as long as once he comes back, they get on a run, and if they have a really strong second half to the season, why not Vancouver? So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Contender, just a playoff team that gets knocked out in the first round, or do you think, nope, no playoffs? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.